Hi, everybody. All right, so as you could see, I'll be talking about LLMs in the healthcare domain. I'm a data scientist from John Snow Labs. Some of you may not know the company. So it's a healthcare AI company that is behind the most popular framework in NLP in the enterprise sector. It's called, so the framework is Spark NLP. It's an open source library to carry out natural language processing. And on top of that, we built a healthcare library, so specific to the healthcare domain, with pre-trained models for various subdomains in healthcare. And it's currently being used by most major pharma companies, big hospitals, payer providers. So that's why I'll be talking to you about LLMs today, is because LLMs are spun out of the NLP domain, so natural language processing. This is to do with anything that's free text, so anything from radiology reports to insurance claims, anything that has text in it can be extracted. And so we'll just start off with a very brief history of a recent history of this huge wave of LLMs. I say recent because it actually starts before 2019 with the first versions of GPT by OpenAI. We have some notable language models here that were released. There's GPT-3 in 2020, Flanty-5 by Google not too long ago. That was released about the same time as a bit before ChatGPT. And then very recently, Llama by Meta and, of course, GPT-4 by OpenAI. So this field is, of course, exploding. And more recently, this has started to look a bit more like a mess. New models coming out every single day. So we're all trying to keep up with it. In terms of the wider landscape, so within this landscape of constantly newly published LLMs, the consensus is quite clear. GPT-4 is basically the one that's ruling all of them. So the most, let's say, capable one. ChatGPT, so GPT 3.5 is not too far behind. And then on the open source side here, you see a list of open source models that are available. We have Vicuna, actually, that's a lighter weight model, 13 billion parameters. That's actually doing really well for a small model, and it's open source. So things are starting to look good for the open source community. And of course, you've all been able to witness the real-world impact of these language models internally at the company, and we've heard from many other engineers, working data scientists. Having a ChatGPT is like employing some kind of intern that is able to do a job that used to take 3 days in a couple seconds. So we're seeing huge boosts in productivity. Same thing, Microsoft and Google are starting to integrate these products, so these models into their products. Google kept on repeating the word AI a million times at its recent Google I/O conference. So their strategy is really intelligent. They're really trying to integrate these models into all the products that we use, so from Google Docs to Google Slides. And overall, AI is having what we can call its iPhone moment because of these language models. But in the healthcare domain, there's not too much research that has been published on the topic. And this is something really that we're working on. Our customers keep asking us, what are you doing with LLMs? What's the next step? What should we do? And so this is what we'll try to explore today. So there's a paper here by Nori and colleagues that has been published not too long ago, trying to evaluate GPT-based models on some popular medical or healthcare tasks. So here specifically question answering. And GPT-4 especially is exhibiting really quite good accuracy in this task. And same thing, this is in a few-shot approach. A zero-shot approach is also doing really well. Same thing with GPT 3.5. It's not too far off. We also have, yesterday there was a presentation by Chris Kelly on MedPalm 2. So same here. The model on the US medical license exam is exhibiting really good performance. However, you'll see in the blog post where they published this report on this model, there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure this technology can work in real-world settings. And so basically, the gist of it is that on these different benchmarks, these models are doing really well, but as soon as we bring them into real-world applications, we see some issues popping up. And if any of you have tried to use these models, to try and carry out some tests, you'll see that there are some pretty dark sides. We came up at the company with our own fine-tuned versions of these LLMs. So for tasks like generic tasks like summarization, question answering, and text generation. And we're preparing writing up some publications comparing, benchmarking ourselves against these larger models. But to move away from these tasks, we have a family of tasks which is actually really central to what our customers do in their analytics work. So, which is information extraction. So the task of information extraction is really to get any free text and abstract relevant clinical concepts from that free text. So we have things like drugs, dosages, diseases that can be extracted. So that task is called entity recognition. Downstream from that, you can link those concepts to ICD codes, SNOMED codes. For drugs, you have RX norm codes. You can do some DeIdentification, so anonymization of your data. And you can build temporal relations between your data. And based on that, you can build various applications, analytics, dashboards. So this has really been the core of what our customers do. So on this family of tasks, there have been some very few papers published to try and benchmark these new models on these tasks. So this is just an example for the non-healthcare domain. So this is the most simple entity recognition task possible. The task is to identify person names, organization names, location names from any given text. Here we're doing a zero-shot approach, evaluating ChatGPT. The accuracies are pretty terrible for a model. You'll see on the other side in the fine-tuned section, these are old-school models that are exhibiting performances in the mid-90s, whereas ChatGPT is sometimes in the 40s, the 50s, and at most in the 80s. So we decided to do this in the healthcare domain because that hasn't been done, and so we evaluated them on three families or subfamilies of tasks. So entity recognition around some random entities like treatment, tests, drugs, procedures. And we also did entity resolution, which is linking those concepts to ICD-10 codes or SNOMED codes. And then finally, text classification. So for example, detecting if a report is about an adverse drug event or not. So since we don't have too much time in this talk, I'll just go over a few examples of these experiments. They're all publicly available in these blog posts on Medium. There's a GitHub repository for you to go check out if you want to reproduce these. So fully reproducible through Jupyter Notebooks. So yeah, let's take a look at a couple examples. First one is extracting medical problems. So here we're using a few-shot approach, which means that we're asking ChatGPT to extract medical problems from the given text. And it's few-shot because we're actually giving it examples of what a medical problem may look like in free text. So here we're giving a series of 18 different examples, and then we're giving it some input text to extract. So we did this on 100 randomly sampled sentences. As you can see here, so ChatGPT is a huge model that's deployed and you're accessing it through an API, is exhibiting like decent performance, 76%, compared to our lightweight, super lightweight models that you can run on a crappy laptop or on just a Google Colab machine. We're in like close to the 90%. Same thing for adverse drug events. So here, same thing, lightweight models. You can run anywhere, any laptop that you have. You could run them. You can hit the mid to high 80s, whereas ChatGPT is in the low 70s. So it would be really an overkill to try and use it for doing these tasks. For DeIdentification, which is one of our major use cases, you might not see the numbers, but basically our lightweight models reach up to 80% accuracy in exact matches. If you go with like partial matches, we're up in like the 90, 92, 93%, whereas ChatGPT is just pretty horrendous at de-identifying any PHI data. So right now in the low 40% of accuracy. For the extracting the codes, we have same thing, really poor accuracy from GPT-based models. GPT-4 doing a bit better, but still not good enough for the applications our customers usually look for. We actually we couldn't even do the other outside of ICD-10, we couldn't do RxNorm or SNOMED because the model kept the models keep hallucinating and making up random codes that just don't exist. So really, this is not advised to use. So to summarize, basically through what we've been able to build and fine tune, and also what our customers are giving us as feedback, so LLMs are basically really good at tasks that can make healthcare providers' lives easier. So anything that goes from summarizing notes or profiling patients, there are a bunch of startups that are getting created around these tasks. LLMs are really good as well at indexing, so querying some knowledge bases. This is done with really cool open source frameworks like LangChain that are democratizing this use case. And same thing, agent-based integrations within existing software. So having the LLM as the interface to access other software, that's something that's really quite incredible to do with LLMs. So for the bad, as you may have seen, they're quite bad data abstractors. Another issue, which I didn't really touch upon, is that on-premise deployment of LLMs is simply right now impossible. You are going to have to access an API, so this means you have to send your data to some kind of data center, and usually, especially in the healthcare domain, that's just a non-negotiable, not possible. The other issue I briefly mentioned, hallucinations and truthfulness, is something that's still right now really difficult to control in LLMs. And finally, as we've seen, like from our personal experience, fine-tuning these models, fine-tuning them to the domain and the tasks that we want is quite time-consuming and requires a lot of expertise. So to move forward, I would say that the best you could do in the healthcare domain is to leave the data abstraction to high precision models, or you could call them old school, even though they're just a year or 2 years old. And then leave the repetitive or laborious tasks to LLMs. And actually, the ideal solution would be to combine them, where you'll have so the LLMs deployed and guardrailed by these more explainable deep learning or machine learning models, also guardrailed by knowledge graphs or rule-based systems. And the last thing I could say is that this is something we're actively building, is having LLMs as smart assistants. So an interface where you can query, for example, convert your the query to a structured query like SQL or Cypher and access various knowledge bases. So that will be it for my talk. Thanks for listening. And here's a QR code to access our website. We have a booth out there. I don't think we have much time for questions, so you can go meet me at the booth. Thank you very much.